I don't know. I don't think I've set out to try to open doors for anybody. I've set out to challenge life. I've set out to give myself a challenge every day. And I'm like, hey, if this presents itself, don't be one of these guys that go, hey, well, I'll think about it or I'll get to it. I'm like, show it to me and I'll go try it at least once.
Welcome, Jim Hardy. Thank you for hanging out with me for a few minutes, and really appreciate it. I really don't have an introduction for you, other than I just wanted to hear your story.
Right.
I saw that book come out. We had talked a little bit on Facebook. We were working on a banner and stuff for you, but your story's pretty amazing.
Well, I just hope that I can maybe help some people along the road. I've been through a lot of things and had the opportunity to be blessed to do a lot of good things as far as fun stuff. And I just hope that somebody gets something out of it that blesses them.
Right. Well, just start out with where you were, how your injury happened, and where you went from there.
I was at Auburn University, had 2 classes left to graduate from Auburn in a communications degree. I was working with Auburn University's football team, so I was trying to become a college football coach. And then this happened in 2001, had a tree stand accident where I just fell out of a tree 22 feet backwards and landed on the actual metal of the tree stand. So that's what ended up crushing my T6 vertebrae. And it crushed it enough to where they had to go into my hip and pull bone off of my hip to build the vertebrae back up, just to make the backbone and everything stable.
Wow.
Yeah.
So then they fused that together?
Correct. Yeah,
man,
fused it to be able to hold it together, and they put rods and everything in there to hold everything up straight. And then they went back about a year later or so and took the rods out.
Gotcha. So so you're 2 classes away.
2. That's right.
2 classes away.
Yep.
The world's your oyster.
That's correct.
You're rocking and rolling, man, and it's happening.
Yep. Yeah, I was working for the football team. So Tommy Tuberville, the senator now, was our head coach, and are really good friends with him. And we were trying to get me a coaching job, if I got out to college somewhere. Man. And, then the whole world flips upside down.
What's that like?
A lot of people want to say, well, gosh, you felt depressed or you felt this, or I really didn't. I was kind of one of these people that I've grown up around. My granddads and my dad, both my granddads, World War veterans. One of them was in the Navy, one of them's in the Air Force. And they've always been the type that if something happened to you, you just strap your boots up and you keep moving. I've watched them break an arm and they just kind of tied up and like, okay, let's finish doing what we're doing. I was like, no, you need to go to the hospital. And they're like, we'll get there. So I grew up in that environment that it's just, you just buckle up and keep going. So that's what I did in the hospitals. I had the physical therapist. I said, look, you just show me what to do and I'm out of here.
So just being in that environment, having that leadership of your dad, granddad.
Yep.
Kind of like give you the moxie to say, hey, it is what it is.
That's right. Yeah, and that's what it is. I think anybody, and we need it this day and age more than any, is the environment you grow up in. Yeah. Your mom and daddy are setting the table for you, especially your daddy is setting the table for good young men that are coming along. And men out there need to step up and start being a good example.
Man, that's solid. That's a fact. Okay, so now where do you go from there? How long did you stay in the hospital?
We were actually in, I think it was 60-something days total. It was intensive care in like 40-something days, high 30s. So I was literally in the emergency room for that many days. I had a problem with, I think they call it potassium, where your levels in your body, my salt levels, sodium, stuff like that, were thrown off, I guess, by the injury, and the body wasn't accepting salt. So I actually went through about a 10-day period there where they wouldn't let me have anything with salt. I don't know if you know what a painter's sponge is, but these little tiny black sponges that sometimes they mix stuff with, and they'll make a little dab here and there.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I would get to drink during the day. They would give me food. They'd put salt on the food, but then they would say, hey, you're not allowed to drink if you get thirsty or your mouth gets dry. Let one of the nurses know, and we'll come in and sponge your mouth out with a painter's sponge. So what they were trying to do was get your body level so down to where you could get your body to absorb, the salt and the potassium they're trying to overload it with, so it would take place. So, yeah, I've been through a lot of days of a painter's sponge.
Drinking from a painter's sponge.
Yep.
Wow, just to get those sodium levels up.
Correct.
All right, so you come up and they finally get all that stuff stabilized?
Yes, got everything stabilized, got me into a regular room, into the UAB hospital, went through rehab, all those things, physical therapy wise, and then also them trying to teach you how to do things. So they do a great job at UAB at Spain rehabilitation. They wanted to show me how to wash my own clothes, cook my own food. They showed me how to lift weights. They showed me how to just basically everything, like get in a car and drive. They say that a lot of people, they've had these injuries before happen in car wrecks. Some people happen in, buildings, the wildest things. They say, but most of them are car wrecks because they get in such a traumatic thing. Well, they say that it's very traumatic for a person with a spinal cord injury to get into a car again, and drive because they're scared of things like that happening.
Right, just the mental.
Yes, and so they were telling me like, hey, we're going to go to the parking lot and let you drive or just sit in the car today, and then the next day we'll go let you sit in the car some more, and then we'll work our way up, 2 or 3 weeks from now, we'll kind of get you out rolling. I said, what, they got me and set me in the car. I was like, what's the point sitting in the car? I was like, let's do something. So they're okay, well, let's just let you just back out of the parking spot and let's ride around, the parking lot. And I was like, we rode around the parking lot and I was like, y'all are wasting your time. Yeah. I said, I want to do, show me what to do and let's get out of here. Yeah. So like literally the next day they were like, okay, if you feel that comfortable, we'll drive. And like by the end of the week, they told me, they were like, there's no need in us even fooling with you on driving anymore. She's like, you're not scared of it. She's like, I feel like you can drive fine.
Right. So there was no fear or no uncertainty whenever you were in there? No. I mean, it was just actually learning the controls, the hand controls.
Yes.
And then you're off and rolling.
That's correct. Yeah. And that's what they gave me a nickname while I was in there, Will and Skill, they called it. I told them if you'd show me the skill, I had the will to get out of there.
I love it, man. So, that's awesome. That's awesome. That drive, like you said, that is something that is sorely needed.
Yes.
Will.
Yes.
Will, no matter what happens.
That's right.
Man. Okay, so then after you get out of there, I mean, so they're teaching you the skills, basically the new way to walk, the new way to move, the new way to everything.
Right.
Then what?
I just left there and decided, hey, I went home for a little bit and kind of I guess you want to call it brainstorm a little bit and try to get your life together, and you go, okay, maybe college coaching ain't in my thing, maybe this ain't in my thing, and you start thinking, okay, what do I want to do? Well, then I realized, hey, you got 2 classes left. You're going to be a chance to be the first person in your entire family to ever graduate from college. So you're this close, you might as well go finish it. So I strapped up my boots again and went back to Auburn University and finished those last 2 classes. Now, for a dramatic difference out there for people listening, a college campus is already big if you got to walk around it and chase the girls around and all that kind of stuff. But now when you get in one of these things rolling around on sidewalks, it seems like you're going through Mount Everest. I mean, it's up a hill, down a hill, over a curb. I mean, it's a big process.
Right. Golly. So you got your degree.
Yes. Yes.
Any kind of weird hurdles like that had to be a pretty big step. Going from when you're going back to school, but now then you're seated, rolling.
Yes.
Like what was some things that you come across that were like, or was there anything that you came across that was like, okay, this is other than just the spans of the campus,
right?
No,
I would say it's probably a little of everything. I mean, because I went back to an apartment and you try to figure out, okay, before I was living in this apartment, I just run in here and grab snacks and go to school or sleep late and run to class, and there was no more of that. You really had to plan out your day. Right. I really had to have my clothes planned out. I really had to have my food planned out, because if I was going to get to point A to point B on time, I had to really plan things.
Right.
There was no more, let's wait to the last minute and run to class.
That story of you in the book where you forgot your keys.
Yep.
Was absolutely hilarious, man. I mean, it was just like I was laughed a little bit, out loud whenever I was reading it. I was like, this dude has got some more kind of something behind him. You want to share? I mean, can you just share that right quick?
Oh, well, it's just one of those things that, just like what you were talking about, that if you don't have a scenario and I don't have a plan going, then stuff like that happens, and I get real upset that I'm like, okay, gosh, I forgot these things, and now I got to go back in the house and try to figure out how to do this. And then you realize, okay, you can't get in the house, so you got to, you've locked the door and you got to crawl around. And I mean, it's right. Not to give every little detail, because obviously I want people to read the book to be able to figure it out. It's one of those things that it just, it's so simple for you every day because
Right.
if you got your keys, hey, I call somebody or I crawl through a window or something like that. For me, it ain't, you don't just crawl through a window.
Right.
You got to be able to figure out, okay, gosh, I got to get out of this chair. Gosh, I got to figure out how to go through the door. Then I got to drag the chair in. And I mean, it's a whole ordeal. Right. You feel like you have, like I said, crawled up a mountain, just to get back in and get your keys.
Right. It's amazing. And the will to overcome all of that, dude, and not even cry for help, but just say, hey, I'm fixing to make this happen.
Right.
That is just incredible, and very inspirational, all right. So after you get out of school, where do you go from there? Now you achieved that goal, I guess you set that as a goal. Right. And now where do you go?
Well, and it was, again, one of those things, like I sat there and brainstormed and talked myself through, like, okay, what do you want to do? Well, I decided what things important, what are really important in life and what are not. Like, what do you want to go do? What did you want to go do before your injury? And what of those things may be something that you can't do, kind of thing. So I've always been a big bass fisherman and really enjoyed that. Well, I didn't think anything about fishing tournaments and going and traveling and all that kind of stuff. That wasn't my mindset. I just really wanted to enjoy the sport for what it was. So I had the opportunity to go to an event where these professionals fish at, and they allow you to get in the boat with them and be a marshal, they call it, where you can just ride along. It's kind of like, to make it make sense, it'd be like paying to get a ticket to go ride with Tony Stewart or Dale Earnhardt Jr. or somebody like that. You sit in the car while they're going around Talladega. Right. So, and it's really cool to see a professional fisherman. You get to sit there with them. So I came to an event they had, paid my money, and got to be a marshal in that thing. Well, it was so much fun. I was kind of like with them. I said, hey, I want to, do this. I want to go pay my money to travel all over the country with you guys and fish, watch y'all fish all your tournaments. And that's kind of how the fishing thing got set into motion for me, because I was told by those guys, hey, we talked to some of the anglers and we don't really think that you can, pay your money to come ride with us. And I was like, well, I just did in a tournament, so why would I not be able to now? And their situation was, or one of the professionals was, well, hey, if we fall out of the boat, you might not be able to get us back in the boat, kind of situation. Say if I'm off in Florida somewhere and they fell out of a boat, I may not be help them get back in the boat. Well, one, I was like, well, the dummy shouldn't be falling out of the boat to start with, But then two, it was kind of a drive for me that, like, okay, that just set a whole nother wheel into motion of like, okay, you just told me I couldn't. Now I'm going to figure out how I can. So that made me want to go get my own boat, do my own thing, kind of that. And that set that whole world into motion to where I went out and started fishing local tournaments, state tournaments, national tournaments. And I've basically traveled from coast to coast, pulling my own bass boat and, fishing tournaments. I fished as far as Washington, D.C., South Florida, Tennessee, Texas, Georgia, you name it. And it was one of those things that I never set out for it to happen the way that it did. Life just pointed me in that direction. And I just, again, strapped my boots up and said, hey, let's go.
Do you find that as motivation? Like when somebody tells you can't, or
yeah, and it's a different type of motivation. I know a lot of people try to say that they want to prove a point against somebody else, and in the initial, it was for me of like, okay, these guys told me I couldn't, but then once I started, it was kind of like proving a point to myself. Like, okay, you got to figure out how to crawl into this boat. You got to figure out how to drive this boat. You got to figure out if you're going to compete with the best in the world and they're going to drive 70 miles down a lake somewhere to go fish and 70 miles back, going 75 miles an hour, 65 the whole time you're going. Right. That's a tough thing for somebody that's standing up and doing their own deal. For somebody to do it in a chair, that's like going to the moon. I mean, you really got to put the effort and the time in to figure all these things out. Yeah. So in that, for me, that's what set that motion as I went along. I fished some local tournaments and did pretty well. I fished some state tournaments and did pretty well. Well, they have in the professional world, they have these things called the opens where you can actually, a amateur type angler can pay their money and you go fish against some of the professionals. It's kind of like explaining it in baseball. It's kind of like AAA baseball. You're right there next to the high level and you're competing against some of the pros. Well, for me, that's what, I paid my money and I wanted to go fish in those tournaments because I felt like, hey, if you're going to show these guys, what you can do and yourself, prove to yourself maybe you can fish against level, then, you go try it. Well, I fished 2 years of that series, and I ended up being the first disabled angler in the history of Bass Masters, which is the professional organization to ever cash a check as a professional. And it just, some of them, it set the wheels in motion of like, okay, we messed up on this one. We told this dude he couldn't ride with us, and now he's, taking our money. So.
It's good, man. And you breaking barriers, thought barriers, and
Yeah, and it's actually pretty cool because I was talking to somebody not even, I guess it's been 3 or 4 months ago now, another disabled angler that's out there, and the barrier, like you said, the wall's down, and now there's 2 different guys out there trying to do it, and one of them's doing really well. He's actually made way more money than I ever made doing it, but it was kind of one of those things, hey, I saw somebody else do it, so let's go do it.
Right. That just gives me chills, man. Just to see that breaking that kind of barrier, opening the door for somebody else is, I mean, and that seems like the theme that so far of what I've read in your book is basically just opening the doors for other people.
Right.
Like that's just your MO. Where did that come from?
Well, I don't know. I don't think I've set out to try to open doors for anybody. I've set out to challenge life. I've set out to give myself a challenge every day. And I'm like, hey, if this presents itself, don't be one of these guys that go, hey, well, I'll think about it or I'll get to it. I'm like, show it to me and I'll go try it at least once. And that's kind of what it's done is along my path in life, and especially within my book that people will read about. Every chapter kind of opened up its own little special thing. And as it opened up the chapter, I didn't shy away from it. I went ahead and tried it. For somebody that's never been a painter, I've had the opportunity, met a guy.
That blew me away.
Started telling me about painting. I was like, heck, I've doodled on a piece of paper. Let's try it. Now I've got hundreds of paintings I've sold. I just enjoy, and it's not, I don't want to do it as professional. I don't want to I don't set out to sell my paintings per se. I don't come to, people and say, look, buy my paintings. Mm-hmm. But people call me or ask me or say, hey, I saw one in Tommy's office. Can you get me one like his or something? And it blows me away because it was something that I never set out to be that. It just, the opportunity was there, and I said, I'll try it.
Man, it's just amazing. Yeah, you're touching everything, and it's a new thing. Like every chapter is like a whole new story that you're starting, and just living and living it out.
Right.
And that's, and I noticed there's a lot of the way you word things and stuff. There's a lot of faith in all of this.
Yes, sir. 100%.
What? 100%.
100%.
What? Explain that to me.
Well, again, that's one of those bringing up things. My grandparents and my parents had always brought me up into faith and always going to church. And it was one of those, for a lot of kids that are out there listening and young people, it's one of those things that you're not real sure about your faith because you hear them talking about it and you hear a pastor talking about it and you go, okay, well, this God thing's maybe something to it, maybe ain't. And you just keep living your life and you're kind of like, okay, I went to church, but it ain't that big a deal. But when you lay in a hospital bed in UAB hospital and you're praying for your life, like you go through 10 days of doctors in there saying, his body's just not accepting salt. His body's just not accepting potassium. I heard the physical words outside my door of a hospital emergency room one morning when a doctors look at your charts every morning before they come in, and 2 of them were talking, and they were saying, look, if this body here, if this person his body doesn't start accepting salt, we're going to lose this guy. And that, when you get one of those moments, that's the faith moment when it sinks in and you go, okay, if all of this stuff that my mama took me to church and my grandma and my daddy and all these people took me to church, if this is real, this is the time I got to lean on my faith and find out, if this is real, we're going to walk through this. Mm-hmm. And it was amazing that once I heard those words, I started talking to myself and I started having prayers in that bed. And I started saying, hey, if this is my time, it's my time. I don't want it to be, but if it's not, show me the way. And the next morning, everything had changed. Salt levels were fine. They said, hey, we're going to move you to a regular room, started doing physical therapy, the whole 9 yards. So it was, everybody has what I call situational faith, where you kind of feel like, okay, maybe God helped me, maybe he didn't. But when he puts you in a life or death situation, mm-hmm. you got to stand on it then. You ain't got no, let me think about this, maybe this was, maybe this wasn't. You stand on it. And after those moments like that happen in your life, it's over. You never look back and you say, he's got me and I'm just rolling with him.
It's awesome, man. That's really awesome. And that, is that, do you see that the moment that basically that string is through everything I've read so far?
Yes.
That
100%.
It's not Jim Hardy. It's
nope.
God and Jim Hardy's fault rolling with or
That's correct.
behind, or I don't know how you
Well,
want
and
to
I've
word
used the
that.
expression before when I go to speak at a lot of colleges and churches and stuff, telling my story and motivational type stuff, is I'm just glad he's out there smoothing the ride, because it's already, you know, to deal with what I deal with on a daily basis with a chair. And like I said, going to college and over those bumps, crawling in bass boats, you know, going and coaching and doing all these other things I was doing and through my life. I've just, like I said, stood on that faith from that day in that hospital bed, and everything else has just kind of smoothed itself out. Yeah, there's bumps in the road, and I do have them. But when you're standing on that faith that you developed, you know, all those years, it's just kind of, I know without a doubt that it may be very tough right now, but I'm going to come through the other side of
Right, right. Tell me about that dog,
it.
Champ.
Absolutely amazing. Yep. He was one of those. I went, and I've always been a dog lover. I met this gentleman from North Carolina that raises Labrador retrievers, been doing it close to 40 years. I mean, I can't say enough about the man, just a great guy and how he raises them, all this stuff. Well, I went out to his facility one day, and he took a litter of puppies and laid them out there on the ground for me. And he was like, well, you know, just watch them crawl around in the yard and and, you know, you tell me if you like one you see. Well, this one particular dog crawled out of the pile and came right to my little wheelchair and started like sniffing my shoes. And I thought, oh, that's funny. And I picked him up and petted him. Well, he set him back out there, and I said, you know, let's let him walk around or whatever. Well, I start watching the other ones. That same dog came back and put his head on my foot pedal. And I told him, I said, it's over. I said, that dog's going home, man. And it's been that way for his entire life that we got to spend together 14 years. He never wavered one bit, never left my side, never anything that I wanted to do, he wanted to go. I mean, the people will see there's pictures in the book where he's literally taken his head, laid it up against my wheelchair like he wasn't going unless I was going. Right. I've had times where I've left to go on trips, say fishing trips, you know, Washington, D.C., let's say, and I knew he couldn't go. Mm-hmm. That dog, it's literally, he'll take my suitcase where I'd lay it down on the bed and start putting clothes in it. He would go get in the suitcase. I mean, that's that dog.
He knew what was going on.
100%. And then we were so in tune together with each other as friends that, like, when we were go to places, say Bass Pro Shop, that was one of his favorite places in the world to go to. We would go there. We would go to the hunting section and go into the dog section, and I would literally tell him, I was like, okay, pick out whatever you want, and God is my witness, that dog would take his nose and just kind of ramble around things. Some days he might get dog treats. Some day he may get a duck decoy that squeaks. And he would tote it in his mouth to the register and go to the register. And I'd say, okay, now, if you're going to get this, you better check out. And he would put his little feet up on the counter and drop that thing down there. And there, I couldn't tell you, I bet that happened 50 times that people working there would like, oh, there's no way we're believing this is happening. And it's another one of those things to me that's a faith thing and a God thing. He put a dog in my life that he knew I needed, but he also put a best friend in there that dog did everything. He even, like I said, I'm human. I have bad days. Yeah. Even when you had a bad day, that dog was there and loved you, you know, whether you're doing great or doing terrible.
Amazing.
But yes, he was an amazing dog.
Amazing. Yeah. I mean, that's not a service dog. Like you said several times, you referred to him as your friend.
Yes. Yep. He was almost like having a brother. I mean, that's kind of how he was. And that's what I believe people should give animals more of a chance, especially dogs, because they really do. They don't care if you're white, black, tall, skinny. Yeah, they love you. Once you treat them right, they love you.
Right. It's just amazing. Just amazing. Great. I mean, that's fantastic. You got to spend 14 years with him.
Yep.
And was he like that was a significant person? That was your best friend?
Oh, ain't no doubt.
So when did you get married?
Been about 5 years ago now.
Right. Yep. So was that after Champ, before Champ?
That was at the end of Champ. She actually got to meet him and spend a couple years with him.
Okay.
Then he died.
Had a family.
Yep. Just for a short time, but we did. And now we've got one of his distant kin folks is at our house named Abby. So it would be probably 3 generations removed from him, from the same place, same breeder, same everything.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow. That's
cool. So we get the same color dog, and we get the kind of reminders of looking at her, but yeah.
Yeah. Is it I guess every dog has their own personality, just like people.
100%. Yeah, and that's why I say people ought to get into animals, because it's really cool that you get to meet that personality of that dog. And this Abby, she's very similar in some ways. She's very energetic, very happy, loving, but she's not that like she's just happy to see you and be around you. Like if you leave, she just like lays down like, okay, they'll be back. You know, she don't freak out that you're leaving. She's just like, oh, they'll be back.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, where I'd got to in the book was being a dad.
Right.
Dude, how cool is that?
That blows me away. It's one of those. We just celebrated this past Saturday her first birthday party.
Really?
Yeah. And her mom and I just tears. I mean, because you can't, of all the stuff we had to go through to have her, you know, and then to see her turn 1 year old, just amazing.
Yeah.
Another God thing.
Another God thing. Right. And then, the responsibility, you know, being a parent myself. It's just, it's amazing. And then the hardships and the trials that you have to overcome in all that.
Well, yeah, and it's one of those things that's in the book, and we talked about it some, is, you know, my process, obviously being in a wheelchair, is a little different than everybody else. So we had to go in and try to do procedures to try to make these things work, and we tried 4 or 5 different ways of doing stuff, and wasn't nothing working. You know, and then we went and did this thing they call the IVF, where you actually get stuff out of me and stuff out of my wife, and they try to, you know, incubate basically a child, and then if that starts working, then they put this back into her, and there's a whole big process of things that have got to go together to make it work.
Right.
And it was, again, a faith thing that we had tried so many things up until that point. We were kind of like, okay, this is the one, this is the last one, this is a big one, because this one procedure is like $20,000, you know, when you do all these things to make it work. And I just told her, I was like, look, we've done everything we can do. We've put all this money into it. I said, we just got to stand on the faith of this thing and see what happens. And I mean, it was absolutely, when you quit, and that's what I would love to reiterate to overanalyze, or however you want to say it to people, when you quit really thinking so hard into how's it going to happen and just let it happen, just put you a plan there and put the faith on it and let it go. And it's amazing how it works out, because that's where we finally, all those other procedures, we try to do it our way. And then the last time we just said, you know what, we've done everything we can do. If it's going to work, you're going to make it work. And there she was.
And this is it.
Yeah. There she was. I mean, and that's, you know, we end up, and it tells the story in there, and people have to go read the book. Her name's Timber. So, and there's a very cute story that goes with how she got her name. So it's in the book if somebody would love to read that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's unbelievable. All right. So we've kind of skipped around as far as this goes, but
yeah,
I'd be amiss if I didn't ask you about football.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Because you've done something as a football coach that I don't think anybody else has ever done. I mean, as far as I know, I haven't Googled it or anything like that, but I don't think it's ever been done.
And that is
going undefeated.
Yeah.
Unscored on.
Yeah.
Like it's just unheard of.
Well, and it's again one of those things that I did not set out to do that. That was not the plan to do that. I told our kids this was my last season, actually. I was a head high school coach for 6 years. Mm-hmm. Well, all 6 years we played in the state championship game. 4 of those 6 years we won the state championship. In my very last year, I kind of already knew it, that I was going to move on, because I'm coaching an hour and a half from my house, my hometown where I live. And I was going to move on and try to go back to that area and go back and do other things. We were talking about possibly having a child and doing different stuff. So that season, you know, everything lined up to where I had a group of boys that I had been coaching since they were little. You know, my 6 years of being there, my first year there, a lot of these kids I think they would have been 7th, 8th graders. Well, they've been with me all the way up until their senior year. Well, there I was staring at a bunch of seniors that had played with me the whole time. So it was kind of like having little coaches on the field. They already knew what I wanted. They already knew what to expect. We trained every day, where some people miss on the details. I love using I have 3 things that I say: attitude, effort, and details. Well, details is one of the biggest things to me. I want them to be able to get on the field and see the game. Don't just go play, and don't just say, well, coach told me it's a run to the right. No, it's not a run to the right. I want you to see that defensive end. And if he's lined up outside of that tackle out there, then instead of going to the sideline where he's trying to keep you from, cut it up and get the yards we want. If he's lined up on the inside, get outside.
Right.
And when you teach them the details of the game, it's amazing to watch their eyes open up and their minds really open up, because they would come to the sideline and they would go, Coach, we know what we're doing. Or they would say, or Coach, I already knew what play they were going to run before they run it because I could see the running back in the backfield. He was kind of leaning his shoulders to the right side, and he was already making his body go that way.
How's that make you feel?
Oh, it was just amazing. I mean, and we rocked along during the season, and we were probably, I don't know, 7 games into the season, undefeated and unscored on. Mm-hmm. And one of my kids, and I'd never even crossed my mind, and one of my kids said, "Hey, Coach, you realize nobody scored on us all year? That's going to be cool." And I was like, no. I was like, we're not going to talk about that. My mental process was every year I coach was we play one game at a time. We go out and we achieve that one game, and then we play the next game. I used it to make it a mentality to them to relate it to school. I was like, if you go study for your test Monday through Friday, or Monday through Thursday, and then on Friday morning when that teacher lays that test in front of you, studied every day, the test is a joke. I mean, you're like, okay, I already know this material. Mm-hmm. So we would study every day all the way up until Friday. And the games were just fun to watch. I mean, I had a front row seat to the best game in the world because you had a bunch of kids running around go, "Coach, we already know the answers to the test," you know? Yeah. So that's how you go, undefeated. Yeah. Now the unscored on, that's just, you got a lot of things that falls in your lap to happen that way. I mean, we've had some balls that got fumbled during the season that could have very easily got picked up and run back. And, I'm definitely never going to say that we planned to do that or that's just how that was. But I can say that we worked every single day to not make those mistakes. I made those kids realize the details. And, yeah, when it was all over with, it's still one of those things that I get asked about all the time. As people said, how in the world did that happen?
Yeah, details.
Yeah, details. I always know the details.
And teaching them kids.
That's correct. Well,
teaching them young men.
That's one of the things that I think that as a coach I failed on if I do not have kids when they grow up, or especially young men teaching football, that if they did not grow up into good young men. So they won a bunch of football games, great. But when they went out into society, are they on time? Like I had a rule at practice. Practice started at 3:30. You were late at 3:28. So they got that point first few days into practice of me being there. One kid was late, and I was like, no, you're going to do this for being late. You're going to do this if you get in trouble in class. You're going to do this. And I had a list of things like, hey, if you don't show up, this is not a participation trophy thing. We're not just going to show up and they're going to give us a state championship. We're not going to show up and that team's going to give us a win.
That's right.
Well, see, I went to a program that had been playing football since I think it was like 1993, and I'd started in 2012. They'd never had a winning season in the school's history. Like I had kids that were already pre-programmed to like, we're going to go out there on the field and we're just going to lose. Like we'll play, but we'll lose. And I was like, we don't think that way. I mean, the first game I ever coached, it was a team that beat them the year before. If I remember story correctly, like somewhere in the 70s to 20s. Like they got beat almost 50 points by this team. And then that very next year when they played them in the first game, they beat those kids 56-0.
Wow.
Yeah. That's the mentality. You've got to take these young men and set them on a path that'll change their life. I mean, I've got some now that are working to be doctors. I've got some that are physical therapists. I've had several that are Marines, Air Force. I've had kids that have gone through the Marines, basic training and said, "Coach, your practice was harder than the Marines." So, but to add one feature to that I really enjoy more than anything, and it really sets home the program and doing what it did, is I have kids to this day on Father's Day will text me Happy Father's Day.
Oh, man.
And that eats me up.
Man.
Because that's when you've done the thing right.
I don't even that's strong.
That to me, again, I didn't set it to be that way, but when you're raising good young men, that's what they are. That's what they have it in their heart that they say, hey coach,
Ooh.
I mean, I got tons of them that are getting married now, that are, working on having kids of their own. And it's just like, they want to know what coach is doing.
Man, that's just, I don't even know if there ain't even nothing else to talk about. No, seriously though, that's fantastic. That's exactly what you want to do.
Right.
That's exactly what I set out to do. What we all should be setting out to do is to train that generation, man, and then them stay connected.
Correct.
Stay connected.
And I think that's where we are right now in society, is that we've had a lot of years of participation trophies where we just show up and oh gosh, we finished 5th and we didn't win a ball game all year in soccer, but let's get a trophy.
Yeah, have a party.
You don't go to work and just sit behind your desk and do nothing and the boss pays you.
Right.
You have to have a plan there. I just had a conversation with one of my kids this week of like, they're working at the water department right now. And I'm like, that's great and wonderful and all that. But I don't want you to wake up 20 years from now and go, I'm still working at the water department, unless that's what you want to do. I said, I want you to have a goal to reach out there and run your own water place.
There you go.
Go out and own your own business. Do something that's going to strive and make your life better. Don't just sit here like you did before when we started coaching you in football and say, okay, well, I'm okay being a loser. It's not okay.
That's right. And to have the mentality, the details, to understand the game.
Correct. 100%.
If we're playing football, understand it.
Yep.
When you go out to play in life, there's a whole lot more stuff you got to understand.
Oh yeah. No, and that's what I told them all the time. I failed if I didn't make you good young men. Yeah. And I want them to every day in life to see the details coming, and the rest of it's, takes care of itself.
Yeah. Man, that's fantastic. Fantastic stuff, man. All right, well, how do we close?
Well, I don't know. I'd love people to take a chance to read the book. It's as you've already told, chapters of my life. It basically tells you, walks you through, not from me from birth to now. It's walking you through 20 years, the first 20 years of me being in a wheelchair. It's basically kind of like my eyes are open, hey, wheelchair life's a little different. This is what I'm seeing. This is what I'm doing. And it, like, we've walked through some of it. We've covered, the dog, and we've covered some football and some, there's a lot of fishing stuff in there. There's a lot of stories about the nonprofit program I started. There's a lot of
we got to hit on that.
Oh, okay.
Just a minute. I'm sorry.
Okay. No, it's okay.
Yeah, let's hear about Off.
Yeah, Off is a Outdoor Friends Forever is what it's called. It's a nonprofit where we get children into the outdoors, and specifically children with special needs. I call it that we pair people with special talents, kids with special needs with people with special talents. So that if, like, we've had kids that we carry fishing, hunting, sporting activities, we've had them, they may be the manager on their football team or baseball team, or like for instance, our football team, all 6 years I was a head coach, every single year we had a special kid that got a jersey and he was part of the team, because I wanted my boys to realize, hey, this kid right here may be different, but he's still a kid. He still wants to do what you want to do. He still wants to be part of the team. He still wants to score a touchdown. And it was, chokes me up even talking about it. It was one of those things that my kids would come to the sideline and they would say, Coach, I want to score a touchdown for so-and-so.
Oh.
That's what gets you as a coach, because you're kind of like,
they get it.
They get the big picture. They get it. They want this little kid to be part of their world. So I want them to go out again as the men in life and start seeing other kids and families with needs and go, I can help. I've been there. I've seen that. Just because Johnny's in a wheelchair, just because Johnny's got crutches or a walker or whatever, right, he still wants to be a dude like the rest of us. He still wants to have fun. So our nonprofit that we started is to get those special children outside. It's also to get the families involved and getting them outside, because I've had tons of times of, like, a story, for instance, is taking a child fishing. When I've had a child out there fishing that had never been fishing before in their life, they start having fun. Well, Dad's sitting over there reading a book or doing whatever he's doing to kind of killing time. Mm-hmm. And once he starts seeing his child have so much fun, then he's like, well, maybe I can try that. Well, then he tries it. And then all of a sudden I get this story from these people that are from Orlando, Florida, that they say, hey, I've never really been a fisherman, and we've got a pond that's in our neighborhood, and I think I'm going to start taking Johnny down to the pond, once a week or so and try to fish.
Right. And
it just blows me away, because you've put a family, a father and son together that didn't have that connection. They've always looked at it as, well, so-and-so's in a wheelchair, and me and him, we play video games at the house, but that's just, they limit themselves to what they think this child can do.
Right.
And the box is wide open for those children. It may be a different way that you got to go, achieve that activity, but it's out there.
Right. That's something about your story that's incredible, is there are no limits.
No, I just don't see that. I think there's times where you feel like they are, but all you got to do is figure out a different way to get there. The details. And as I tell people with the same thing is the attitude and the effort that I talked about. The attitude, we get to set that every single day that we wake up. Yeah. I can wake up mad at this world all I want to. Doesn't change a thing. I can get mad. Ain't nobody on the other side of that computer screen that just because I'm typing something and say, oh boy, he's going to be mad at me when I type this. No, he's not. You get to set your attitude every day. A lot of times kids turn on music and they get all pumped up and excited, and it sets their day for them. That's what I tell people, to go out and set your day. Get you excited from the start, set your attitude, and it changes the rest of the day.
Yeah. I've
seen people that have, got into a mood and been mad for a week. Why? The person you're mad at hadn't even thought twice about what you're mad about. Move on and live life. Don't sit there and just be mad about it. And the same thing with the effort. If we put out the effort, you're going to get things back. I've got an expression that I use a lot of time about gardening life. I'm a big guy that likes to get out and plant stuff and trees and bushes and all kind of fun stuff on my farm. Well, I say that you garden life. If you're going to reap good, you better sow good, So I want to sow good things. I want to help people when I can. I want to sow good opportunities into my life, like by doing a lot of good work. And hopefully when I do all that good work, it comes back, Right. You ever put a seed in the ground, that I'm going to plant a garden, you don't know what the heck's going on under that ground, do you? You can't watch it.
That's right.
So you got to have faith in that seed, and you got to put it into some good soil, because if I plant it on concrete, it ain't going to really do a whole lot.
That's right.
When I plant it into that soil and watered it, it's, rest is history, as they say.
Yeah.
But yes, the nonprofit's been a lot of fun thing for us. We've met a lot of great people over the years doing that. Kind of trying to wrap this thing too, the way you're talking about ending it up, is the chapters all kind of walk you through the years, and each one of them is kind of stair-stepping, like, okay, I was working on off and I ran into this person. So now all of a sudden, the wife came about, and then I was, with my wife and my child came about. And I also, just to really shed light on it, I told some funny stories within the book too about wheelchairs and things that people don't ever realize, the things that could go on. And one of them, not to tell people the whole story, but to give you a tidbit on it, is, have you ever heard of somebody that lost their wheelchair and bought it back in a yard sale? And that's a very true story. Going to town one day, got to town and was going to get out. My wheelchair wasn't in my truck no more, and then I had to buy it back at the yard sale.
Somebody stole it.
No, it's not stolen. It actually, and I'll tell you the story, because it is in the book as well. But no, I was actually riding down the road, and if you don't, like anybody else, you wouldn't think anything about putting stuff in the back of your truck.
Right.
Well, a friend of mine put my chair in the back of the truck, left the tailgate down.
Oh.
We never thought about it. We ride about 20 minutes to town. I get to town, going to get out. There's no wheelchair. So me and him were like, crap, we left the wheelchair at home. We ride all the way back to the house. It's not there. And I'm like, holy, what in the world? And he's like, dude, I swear I put it in there. So we start riding roads, looking for it where we've been, looking off in the ditches and all these things.
Right.
The last place in the world, I think, to look, we've already passed these ladies one time. We go back the opposite direction looking, and I look over, and these two ladies are having a yard sale, and it is literally sitting in the yard sale. And I asked the woman, I said, ma'am, that's my wheelchair. And she said, well, sir, I was inside and I come out and this chair was just in my yard. So I thought I thought it was just a blessing. And I said, well, ma'am, it's mine. And she was like, well, how do I know it's yours? I was like, I promise you. And I started explaining all this stuff. And she was like, well, you don't mind if you give me a little something for it. And then she was trying to say for finding it. And I was like, well, sure, I'll pay you $10 for my own wheelchair. So I've now bought my own wheelchair back in a yard sale.
That's hilarious, man.
Now you tell me how that happens.
I don't. That's
and there's story of stories, like that in there. I've had stories with ATVs that wouldn't stop running down through the woods. I've had, gosh, I couldn't tell you. I mean, I've drove off these. My chair has a lift on the side of the truck that you hook to it that helps it get in and out.
Mm-hmm.
I've drove off and went down the road with the chair hanging out the side of the truck. So, I mean, there's a lot of things in the book. You'll really get, it gives you a great concept of wheelchair life, and it gives you a great concept to look into the mind of myself and what I'm seeing. And I don't want it. I didn't write the book and hopefully it comes out. And a lot of people have already told me that have already bought the book that it doesn't come this way. But I don't want it to be about me. I want it to be about life. I want it to be about what you can do. Yeah. I want it to be about take this chapter in life right now for what it is, and when the next thing comes about, just jump in there and go for it. Don't stand back and watch. Well, hey, I just coached football for 6 years, so I need to just prop my feet up and relax.
Yeah.
No, let's move on. Now we're traveling and speaking. We're writing books. We're doing other things. I mean, I've had a lot of people ask me about writing books. I've never been a book writer. Never even crossed my mind for a second. Like I just not me.
What instigated this? What prompted the whole, hey, I'm gonna write a book?
Well, years and years of speaking, going to speaking engagements, I bet I've heard it 100 times. Is like, hey, there's a lot of people that haven't heard your story. They need to hear it. Well, then a book company actually contacted me and said, hey, we'd be interested in doing your story. And I was like, you don't want to do my story. I was like, I'm just some guy from the country, you know, that just kicks around, does this, that, and the other. And they were like, no, we've heard a lot. Well, then the process of it, of writing it, I was never an English major. I'm not an English writer. I mean, I a lot of ain'ts and is's and all that. That's, I mean, I throw that stuff in there.
Right. And I love it.
And I told him, I said, I just got to write it in my words, and then you can kind of help me clean it up a little bit, the grammatical stuff, but we just got to leave it the way that it is. And it's also, I think it's about 70-something pages of a book. I told him I want to write a book. I got a lot of friends that don't read books. I said, so I want to write a book that you can read in 3 or 4 hours, not 3 or 4 days.
Love it.
And it's been amazing, truly amazing, because of just the short time it's been out, in probably a month. I couldn't even tell you of the hundreds that have already been bought, of people that are calling and telling me. I'm getting messages from people on like Facebook. I have no idea who they are. One story, and it's another one of them that just tears me up about it, is a lady messaging me. Don't have no clue who she is, but she was a friend of a friend that they said, hey, you need to read this book. She just lost the use of her left leg. She said, I've been going through depression. I've been going through, like, couldn't get my clothes on. She's like, I've stood up 2 or 3 times and fell in my floor trying to get to my kitchen. Mm-hmm. And she's like, I didn't know what I was going to do. And she said, I read your book. And she said, I now have a totally different perspective on how I can go do things. And that just blew me away, because that wasn't what I set out to do. I was telling people my life. I was telling people what I do. I'm just doing me. And I hope it, you know, it helps people see they can do them. And I'm just having story after story of people like that, and it just blows me away, because I just never saw myself being that.
Yeah.
And it's all a faith thing. He's walked me down a path that I never would have gone on my own. I also 1,000% believe that God uses people to touch other people. And
absolutely,
I would have never touched people in my former, as I call it, my former life and my new life, my former life of being a college student up walking around having a fun time. Yeah, I could have ministered and helped a few people through life, but now the situation he's put me in to go through all these stories and meet all these people, now we're talking thousands, you know, of people that I've done speaking engagements, that I've talked to personally. I mean, I've been to people's houses that have had injuries and sat down and talked with them and their families. And
right.
I just, once I got out of my way and started doing it his way, the rest of it's history.
And making a big difference.
He's making a big difference.
He's making a big difference.
Yeah.
Through you.
Yes, sir. 100%.
Fantastic, man. Fantastic. It's an excellent story. You're an inspiration, or you're letting him inspire others through you. And that's honorable. And I mean, I just can't thank you enough for doing that, you know, and just reaching out there and having the attitude you got. I truly appreciate it. Well, and I appreciate you coming on here and spending some time with me.
Yes, sir.
Today.
Yes, sir.
It's an honor.
Well, I sure do appreciate it. And had a great time. And the book is out there in a lot of places if people want to go to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million. There's several bookstores that are now calling me trying to pick it up to put it in their own personal store. So yeah.
And where does everybody where can everybody reach you online? How do they?
All the social medias. I mean, I'm out there on Facebooks, the Instagrams, all that kind of stuff.
Just search Jim Hardy?
Yes. Yep. Just my name, and you know, nothing special about it. I do have a podcast that I started about 6 months or so ago called Rolling with My Special Friends. And it is, again, catered just like my nonprofit is, as we talk to families with special needs kids. The kid gets to, if they're very verbal, they get to tell their story and how they feel. Mom comes in there on the back end of it, or dad, and says, hey, this is, for instance, one of the kids we talked to has Down syndrome. Well, they get on there and they tell some of the funny little stories that Down syndrome kids can tell. And then mom gets on there and says, hey, you know, Mom, how does it feel knowing you were about to have a child with special needs? They tell their story. Well, and then we're using this to reach out there and let other families, that there may be a family in Alabama that told me that story. There may be a family in Florida that's about to have a Down syndrome child and would love to hear, hey, what did you walk through? How did you plan out to get this thing?
Wow.
And it's not a podcast to where I want to be one of these people that have 1 million listeners. I'm trying not to build views. I'm trying to build families. I want it to be an outreach to where if I've got a special needs child, or if I've got somebody in my family that's got a special need in a wheelchair and whatever, I can go and listen to some of these podcasts that are talking to people that are in a wheelchair, and they tell their whole story, tell what they deal with every day and how they do it.
Man, that's powerful, man. What and how would listeners donate to OFF or the Outdoor Friends, that nonprofit?
Outdoorfriendsforever.com.
Okay.
That's what it is. It's got everything on there, our schedule of events, things we've done in the past. It's also got a donate button on there where you can click on there and it goes through PayPal. I think it is. It can pay the address and everything's also on there. There's emails on there for me and every single one of our board members. We have a 7-panel board that basically every dollar that's donated to Outdoor Friends Forever, we don't have a single employee. I don't make a dime. None of these other 6 people on this board make a dime. What we do is say you want to donate us $100. Well, that goes into the pool of the money that we have. And if we're getting ready to have a fishing event, we buy a kid a fishing rod, a tackle box, lures, anything we can think of that would make them enjoy fishing. That's what we get. Same way with hunting, camo, boots, calls, gloves, all that stuff. That's what that stuff comes out of. We're actually fixing to have here in about a month or so a project we've been working on for several years, but it's now turned out to come into fruition. We're going to have a girls' night where we're going to have about 5 or 6 little girls with special needs are all going to come to our camp and stay for a whole night. They're actually going to come on a Saturday morning, stay all day, spend Saturday night and all day Sunday, and go home Sunday night. But what this little girls' night is little girls obviously get to be little girls most of the time if they're normal. Well, these other kids don't. So we're going to have ladies that are going to come in, do their hair for them, do their nails for them.
Wow.
They're going to learn how to cook. They're going to learn how to play. They're going to learn how to clean. They're going to do all these things and just be a little girl with special needs.
Wow.
So it's kind of cool to see some of these things come together.
Right. And 100% of that stuff, 100% donations go directly to the kids.
100%. That's why I said we have a board, 7-panel board, including myself. It's all on the website. Every one of the board members' names is on the website. We're as open can get. Our lawyers will tell you that hey, it's a nonprofit. If you want to see the books, let us know. We'd be happy to show you that we bought fishing rods and tackle boxes and
that's awesome.
Foods for the kids and all that stuff.
Yeah, and they get to keep the stuff.
100%. Yeah, they keep it all. Goes with them. Yeah, same
fantastic.
Same way with the rolling with my special friends. It's just rollingmyspecialfriends.com is how you get on there. The YouTube channel is the same thing, just rolling my special friends. Yeah. And we got all our different channels that we've already put up or shows, and it's just moving along one day at a time.
I heard that, man, and that's what it's all about.
Yes, sir.
Man, I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Thank
Jim
you.
Hardy, thank you. And y'all check this dude out on social everywhere and get this book. This is how I roll. Appreciate you, Jim.
Yes, sir.
Have a good one, buddy.